One man, one mission, to rid the world of chronic anxiety once and for all. The Anxiety Guy, Dennis Simsek, shares his personal transformation from living a life filled with overwhelming worry to becoming a full-fledged positivity machine. A leading authority in generalized anxiety, Dennis gets to the truth of your mental health challenges and sets you on a path to transforming each and every area of your life. Here he is, the one and only, the Anxiety Guy.
My friends, for episode number 232, I've decided to share with you the most powerful interview that I've done up to date. This is with Lori Massicott on her podcast, and I believe that you're going to get a tremendous amount from it. Enjoy the interview. Love you all.
Hey there, I am Lori Massicott. I'm the host of 250 and Beyond, the podcast that celebrates women in the middle of life. If you are new here, welcome, friend. If you are returning, welcome back, friend. I'm giving you all a tight virtual hug. I am 52 years old. I think that midlife right now is the time to go after it and thrive and reach to new levels in life. And that is what I aim to do every single day. Do I hit the mark every single day? No, I don't. But that's okay. Now I know that tomorrow is going to be a better day. And I just focus on that. For 30 years, I overdrank. I was a constant worrier, very high anxiety, and I really just didn't take care of myself at all. Self-care was a mystery. I didn't even know what it was back then. For a really long time, I am a sober coach. I help women over 40 live without alcohol and become the woman who no longer wants to drink, because it's not just about quitting drinking, it's what you do next. And that is what gets me out of bed every single day. I've had anxiety for as long as I can remember. I had my first panic attack at 27, and after that, I was in constant survival mode, anticipating and creating the next one. In today's episode, you will hear the story of my guest, Dennis Simsek of The Anxiety Guy, and how during his mid-20s to early 30s, he was overwhelmed with chronic anxiety. Dennis is a passionate CBT and NLP master practitioner and life coach who continues to inspire millions worldwide through the Anxiety Guy podcast on iTunes, his popular blog at theanxietyguy.com, as well as his many social media channels online. His fun-loving, gentle, and yet straightforward coaching style has helped many people truly understand that they are more than anxiety. Dennis talks today about having a conversation about your anxiety, and so you are no longer hiding it and why that matters, how to not be led by anxiety, the 4 components of anxiety, renegotiating with yourself, replacing self-punishment with self-love. Don't we love that? And getting out of survival mode so you can start living. He also shares a story of the night that he almost took his life. It's powerful, and you're going to feel it, and you're going to leave this episode feeling hopeful and that you can overcome anxiety. Sit back and enjoy Dennis. Hi, Dennis.
Hello, how are you?
I am doing so well. Welcome to 250 and Beyond. I am honored to have you here.
Oh, God. I'm honored to be here. It's a pleasure, and I'm so grateful to just be a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This podcast celebrates women in the middle of life and men, and every podcast episode starts with the question, what is your age and how do you feel about aging? And you can answer that however you want.
My age is 39. I'll be turning 40 in June, so I'm excited actually for 40. I hear that 40 is the new 30. So if you were to ask me that question actually about 10 years ago, I would dread the answer. I would look at all the ways that life is getting worse and how difficult days may be upon me. But when you ask me that question now, it's almost like there's an anticipation, a curiosity that I never had before. And this isn't even something that I really have been pushing or anything like that. It's kind of a natural process when you do this, the healing inner work over time. So I'm really looking forward to actually the 40s, 50s, and hopefully I make it far enough to to keep doing what I'm doing.
Oh my gosh, it's that freedom, huh?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we have so many great topics to discuss, and the main topic is anxiety. And your podcast, I love it because it's just the shorter episodes, and I've listened to so many, and I resonated with one, which is talking to people about your anxiety, not avoiding it, not drinking over it, which is what we talk a lot about here, and which I did for a long time. I want to ask you, though, on the episode that I was listening to, you were talking about the inner child and the adult and who you are showing up as each day.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me when you first experienced anxiety, where you think it came into your life?
What my anxiety started, and I've done a lot of regression work, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of hypnotic work and altered state work. I've done a lot of CBT work. I've done a lot of inner work. And, through that inner work, I realized that my anxiety started between conception and the age of 4. And when I mean conception, I'm talking about while being in the womb, listening to stories and feeling stories and the emotions of mom, saying things that don't really make me feel like I belong on planet Earth. There were conversations such as, maybe we can't afford this child, and so forth. How can we provide the love for this child when we don't have the same love for ourselves? A relationship is falling apart. So if you were to ask me where my anxiety started, it would be between the times that we rarely look at. Because in today's world, we look at the present situation and we say, this is causing me anxiety. It's my boss, or it's the roads, or it's this or that. But I'm a big believer, having worked with so many people now, that between conception and the age of 4 is where the core beliefs, the subconscious programs, the view of reality begins. And so for me, it was kind of like, okay, the program is set. Love equals fear. Love equals anger. Because that's what I saw the most when I was young. And that's what was repeated the most often in my environments. So I unconsciously attached love to these negative things. So as I went about my life, I was consciously trying to, do good things and be a positive person. But those subconscious programs were running on an endless loop saying, you know what, you're inferior. You know what, you have to punish yourself in some way as you go about this life, because that equals reality and love. And you also have to be a perfectionist. And if you're not, then people aren't going to love you. And so it was always this battle, Lori, between conscious and subconscious, and looking to align those two things rather than have one be so different than the other.
Wow. I mean, when I heard that on your podcast, I just had to pause and think. Most of us, yes, we are looking at that present situation, that experience that we have, that say, oh my gosh, I'm having so much anxiety right now over this. But going back that far, I just had to ask that first, because that just blew my mind. I never even thought of it.
I know. Nobody does. Nobody does.
It makes
it's
so
not
much
the first
sense.
thing that comes to your mind when you think about your anxiety.
No.
And, over time, just to add to this, over time, we tend to not have access to those memories, not have access to that information, because that information was so overwhelming, Lori, for a child at that age, that this subconscious mind and body look to stuff it aside and not to deal with it. So as we stuff it aside, we continue to feel in a negative way, and whatever's in our present moment, we tend to attach stress and anxiety to what's going on with that person or that thing, rather than be able to have access to the information as to when this all started. So it's a really interesting journey. And as people spend more time, I believe, caring for themselves, loving themselves, being open to change, nature, meditation, and good positive energy from other people, they start to come face to face with this missing piece of information or missing pieces of information. And then they can re-perceive it because they've got so much momentum moving in the right direction. So the subconscious says, hey, you're ready. You're ready. You're ready to re-perceive this. You're ready to renegotiate this. Is this what happened between conception and 4, our view of reality? And now, because you've got all this great momentum, you have the opportunity to look at those experiences and say, you know what? It's not. This is in fact true.
Wow. That is amazing to me. And that inner child, you got to go back to that inner child, picture yourself, you're listening to this, and where all of those insecurities and feelings of fear and, like you said, love was fear, anger, where all of those things are showing up and we're still carrying it around like this big old bag.
Absolutely.
And it just needs to be dropped.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you an example of this.
Yeah.
I dated quite a bit in my 20s, after high school and so forth. I had a lot of girlfriends, and don't want to brag, but it was interesting how the character that I was attracted to was very similar from one person to the next. The character was the same. It was almost like I loved the chase, or I loved being beaten up by this woman or this girl. I loved being treated like as if I was being punished in some way. And so it was interesting because it was always the same character, same personality, same identity, same kind of relationship, but with a different face. And so for years, I went about going, why are my relationships falling apart all the time? Why is it that I can't find someone or connect or gain rapport or create a bond with someone and really fall in love and really, feel like I'm connected? Well, if you look at those subconscious programs again, it says, you know what, Dennis? Well, punishment is something that has to be reoccurring and consistent in your life. And since your earliest memories with your authority figures were there reminding you of this program, we unconsciously are looking for the kind of person out there that will continue to make you feel this way because it fits our view of reality. So it wasn't until I went, you know what, holy smokes, and every time I met someone that was peaceful, loving, positive, I said, no, this is too easy. This doesn't feel right. Right? So I kept sabotaging it. Then I looked deeper. Then I finally, rearranged these programs. And I met someone and I stuck to that person, and the rest is history.
Wow. Did you meet somebody and get married?
I'm still engaged.
Oh, you're still engaged.
It's been years. She's bugging me about it. I'm bugging her about it. And we just can't seem to set a date. But it's
okay.
Coming. It's coming.
Okay. It's there.
It's there.
Wow. That's very interesting. I do resonate with that. I honestly do. I used to feel like I had to have that chase and dating and going after the wrong people. And the nice ones were like, oh, no.
Exactly. It's too easy.
They're too nice and it's too easy. Yes, I get that. Can you just share a little bit of your story? Because I know that, during your 20s and early 30s, you were overwhelmed with chronic anxiety. When did that start showing up? Like, did you feel it when you were in elementary school and high school and those years?
Definitely.
Okay.
When I was starting at the age of 3, my dad decided to make me a professional tennis player. And so there was only one real option in my life. There was no plan B or plan C in his, in his world. Mom didn't have much say. She provided tons of love, but dad ran the household. He ran my life. And so you can think about how a child goes about his everyday life playing this sport of tennis, liking it, not really knowing if he loves it yet. And every single time he makes a mistake with a certain type of shot, he gets beaten up for it. He says, no, that's a bad thing. Mistakes are bad, right? And over again, hundreds, thousands of mistakes, beating myself up over it, having other people beat me up over it, learning that perfectionism is the key, learning that mistakes are bad, and never really being open to anything different. This carried on into elementary school, where no matter what I did, if I didn't do it if I didn't do it right the first time, I avoided it. I pushed it away. And this followed on into high school. I was very uncomfortable around people. This led to having a people-pleasing type attitude with other people, hoping that they would accept me in some way, and really feeling quite inferior to everyone and everything that came into my life. And so you can see how early this began. And all throughout my school days, there was always a sense of feeling like I was artificial, like an artificial person waking up in the morning, an artificial way of viewing reality, an artificial way of connecting with other people, all for the sake of looking cool, being accepted. And that places a tremendous amount of pressure on a person to be that way, because the opposing way of being is way too risky. If I were to go into a high school class and here I am and I'm peaceful and I'm not forcing conversations and looking for people to accept me, there would be a sense of being weird or left out. And so I never took that risk. So I always tried to be, the best at the basketball or this or that, just so I could feel connected to others. And then, of course, this continued into adult life, right? The jobs, the careers, and it really was a life of sensitivity and total fear. No matter where I was, no matter who I connected with, no matter what I was doing, I found myself looking for something to worry about, no matter what it was. And the cycle continued for many, many years.
Mm-hmm. I get that. What does anxiety feel like to you?
Oh, man. Anxiety feels like a mix of a couple different things, Lori. Anxiety feels like a perpetual state of worry. Anxiety feels very much internal because it's very much somatic and physiological. It also feels very much external because it's the situations and the people that could make the anxiety worse. Anxiety feels very much imaginative, where we use our imagination in ways that harm us rather than help us. You wake up in the morning and those pictures are running right away. I got to face my boss today. What's that going to look like? Boom, there's a picture there. I'm going to go on the road and take on traffic. I wonder if I'm going to be late. Boom, another picture there. Am I going to be connected to other people? Or are they going to see my sensations? Pictures. So it's very much mental. It's very much physiological. It's very much emotional. And it's very much imaginative. And if you combine these 4 components that I believe make up anxiety, you're looking at someone who's looking to survive the day rather than thrive.
Yeah.
And when you live in a state of perpetual survivalness, you're really missing out on the truth behind life. And the truth behind life is that we're meant to live in more of a flow state. If you look at nature, if you go to nature, the water doesn't, the water in the creek that's flowing doesn't battle to get by the rock, right? It just continues on in its journey. The trees that are losing leaves and such, the leaves aren't looking to get put back onto that tree. They accept their faith. They accept that the wind's going to blow them from here to there and so forth. There's a certain amount of trust there. But with anxiety, there's no trust in yourself, no trust in reality and life, and there's no faith in what's to come. It's really dark.
It is really dark.
Yeah.
Did people know that you were having anxiety? Like, did you show it on the outside?
I did a really, really good job, and people are telling me lately, I do some stuff on Instagram, a little acting job here and there, but people used to say, man, you look so calm on the outside. Oh, yeah, well, I've gotten pretty good at this idea of putting on a mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't share my anxiety with many people because they simply didn't understand, because they didn't go through the journey themselves. I did a really good job of stuffing it aside and looking to escape situations that may cause me to feel more sensitized. And so my life was this constant avoidance of people and places and things, and working as minimal as I possibly could in order for me to feel, sane and with a certain sense of control. But it was an acting job every single day. It was an artificial identity versus this natural identity that really didn't have a chance to show up most of the days.
And that's exhausting to keep
exhausting.
That up. Yeah,
absolutely exhausting.
Hearing you talk about it, it's just, I could feel it. It's like so much work to keep that up, and that constant loop.
You've been there.
I've been there. That constant loop that starts in your brain, and you can't, I think there were days that went by I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just always so concerned about me and what other people were thinking about me. And, oh my gosh, I'm going to panic. Or, I was a big blusher. My neck would get red. So I tried to cover it for years. It was,
that was your symptom.
That was it. Like, so that's what I meant. Like, can people see it on the outside? Because for me, that was brutal. Oh my gosh, you have like blotches all over your neck. People love to point that out.
Yes. I think they can sense it, but they're just a little too afraid to bring it out in case they're wrong in some way or feel more disconnected from you in the future. It's an interesting life where you're tippy-toeing around, right? Yeah. Totally.
It is that avoidance. And I want to ask you, how we can talk to people about anxiety. But I wanted you to share your story about the night. And you wrote about this on your website. I read about the night that you were considering taking your own life. Can you share that with us?
There were many days where I considered it, but one day more than any other, that the pain was just too great, that I started weighing my options, Lori. And I weighed my options and I said, you know what? If I continue living this way, since things are getting worse, what's my life going to look like in 5 years? Jeez, it's not looking good. And so what would be the solution that could put all this away? Well, it would be taking my own life. And so I got to the point where I actually created a structured plan on how I was going to do this. And I mapped it all out. It was going to be over the bridge. I was going to take my life that way. And it was interesting because up to that point, I was pretty much 90% there. 90% because I tried everything at that point. I did everything I could. I didn't spend enough time on those methods or those pieces of advices or those herbs or whatever I was doing, but it was almost like with anxiety, you're looking for this instant change. And when it's not there, you give up on it and you give up on yourself. So you can imagine, hundreds of different things and not working for you. And so there I was, I was I was looking at the bridge. I was right there, and everything was ready and so forth. And it was interesting because it was at a time where my son was just born. And if there was one thing that would pull me away from taking my own life, it was him. There was nothing and no one else that could have pulled me away from that situation in that moment. Nothing. And so I basically had this tiny little voice within me that said, you know what? Just give it another day. Give it another day. And it was very subtle, and God speaks very subtly, I've learned. It doesn't yell, it doesn't shout, very subtle. And so I remember giving it another day. And then I remember giving it another day after that, another day after that. And as I began focusing my attention less on me and more on my son, I started to focus my attention more on my fiance. And then I started focusing my attention more on my coworkers, and then the needs of my boss, and then strangers and so forth. And I became a whole lot less selfish and more selfless. Mm-hmm. And week by week by week, I found myself not changing right away, but feeling like I was being guided in the direction of the right pieces of advice, people, and so forth. The mentors started to show up because at that point, I was on my knees, Lori. I mean, it's not until someone is at rock bottom that they actually start to change, that desperation, that dissatisfaction. So I pulled myself out of that, and honestly, there was no looking back after that. Things just started to flow.
Oh, wow. I am so happy for you.
Yeah, so am I.
I know. It just brings tears to my eyes to think of how methodical you were in planning it out. And now you're here helping so many people.
And there's people going through this every day. I mean,
yeah.
It's hard not to get emotionally attached to these types of stories. And I actually found myself, crying about 2-3 days ago when I ran into 3 different stories where people took their own lives, simply based on the back and forth world of anxiety and depression, and feeling like they're so left out from the world and they have no choice but to take their own lives. But the truth is that there is an energy, there is a voice, there is something out there that we truly don't understand that really wants the best for each and every one of us. As long as we can stay open to it and just continue to trust in the journey and have faith in what's to come, I believe that people will be led to the right information. But when you're led to the right information, it's important to accept that information and not just succumb to an ego mind that constantly pulls you back towards that survival mode, because that's what's really going on. It's a battle between the soul and the ego is always looking out for you and being selfish and extremes and so forth. So it's a really interesting journey, and I urge people to take tremendous amounts of inspiration from my own story, your story, and to understand that they are more than capable of turning this around, more than capable. You just have to be open to it.
Thank you for sharing that. It is that selfishness. I felt selfish because I didn't feel selfish. I shouldn't say that. I didn't feel selfish in the moment of my anxiety, my panic attacks. I just look back now and think I was only thinking of myself. Is that how you're explaining that? Because I really want you to maybe touch on that a little bit more with that. Selfishness and then looking outward and helping other people and focusing on other people when you're in that panic.
Yeah, I mean, but I'll tell you something, there is a certain amount of guilt that people experience by experiencing anxiety and other mental and emotional challenges. Because if you present to an anxiety sufferer the idea that it is all about themselves and they're being selfish, the guilt will show up, the blame will show up.
Yes.
We don't want that.
Yeah.
We don't want people to forcefully look to help other people prior to helping themselves first. You can't help anybody until you're at a place in your life where you're experiencing a certain level of inner peace. And I call it the flow state. When you're here, you are naturally, keyword, naturally flowing towards helping more people, because this is really the purpose of life. So we're presented, Lori, with all these challenges, internal challenges that become external challenges. And until we learn the lessons that this subconscious mind and body is trying to teach us, we're never going to overcome these challenges. When we can get to a place where we're solving problems and the voice that is the ego that shouts and is very much selfish in every which way, when that voice, the volume of that voice begins to be turned down, then we're open to more unfamiliar experiences, and we become open to helping more people. So honestly, it's very important to engage in self-discovery first. You have to discover, you have to be curious. I use this word quite often. Curiosity is the key, because instead of being frantic based on how you feel, instead of being frantic based on an idea in your head, instead of being frantic based on an image that you just played out, instead of being frantic, you need to turn this franticness into curiosity, where you go, you know what? Why do I do this? Why do I think this way? Why do I feel this way in the situation? And when you start to replace franticness with curiosity, all of a sudden, it's almost like a new world starts to show up, and you start to go, wow, it started over here and I'm still holding on to this, and I've got this much repressed emotion, because anxiety comes down to repressed, not anger, but rage. Repressed rage based around the people that were the very authority figures that led us to this emotional state. Repressed rage because we broke our own rules. We broke the rules of mom. We broke the rules of our coaches and our teachers and so forth. So there's a ton of stored energy, negative energy, that is stored within the human body, because the body is 100% memory. Okay. And I've said this before, and it takes people a certain amount of time before they start to understand that the feelings they experience are all related to something that occurred in the past that is unresolved and needs to be renegotiated. And when those experiences become renegotiated, the blame goes away, the guilt goes away, the forgiveness shows up. When forgiveness shows up for yourself and other people, now you're on the path towards healing. Now you can replace self-punishment with what we've always been looking for, self-love. Because it's not going to come from anybody else. It's not going to come from the car that you drive. It's not going to come from the bigger house or the place where you're moving to. It has to come from the inside, and it can't show up until you start to renegotiate and re-perceive those past experiences that made you feel overwhelmed.
Gosh, that so good. That just makes so much sense.
It's deep work.
It's really deep work.
And a lot of people get, I want to say this, a lot of people get overwhelmed when they hear stuff like this, but you shouldn't, because it's a natural process, more so than a forced process. It's not like you have to go out and do and take action. It really does start with a decision to change, to embrace what's unfamiliar, and to put aside what you believe is safe, which equals worry. Worry provides a person with a certain amount of safety and security, and that's why they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of not worrying creates more fear than the idea of worrying. Now, these are all things that begin to get renegotiated, reperceived in a person's life. And so you have to make the decision. You have to be open to the change, and you have to be open to being vulnerable for a set period of time until the new programming becomes safe.
Mm. Be open, be curious,
And be willing.
And be willing. Yeah, that's one of my favorite words too. I want to ask you, back when you were having the chronic anxiety, what did you do back then to try to calm yourself? What were you using?
Yeah, what did I not do?
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for the quick fix technique. I was on benzodiazepines for a little bit. My body did not accept antidepressants. I couldn't take them. I got very symptomatic very, very quickly within hours. And so the benzos were there in the beginning stages, and I relied on the benzodiazepines, Ativan, to help me become functional throughout the day. So when I first took it, it was like, oh my God, wow, I really feel like I'm back. Like, this is life. This is how I should be feeling. I feel clear. I don't have my bodily symptoms anymore. What is this? This is the magic pill I've been looking for. And so days would go by, weeks would go by, and my body would get used to that dose. And so there I was, going to the doctor, upping the dose. Lori, I got to the point where I was actually slurring my words as I was going through the day. You can imagine a tennis coach coaching, 6, 7-year-old kids and slurring his words, not even understanding what he's saying or doing. Driving on the street like a reckless driver, right? I couldn't believe I was driving at that point. So it got to the point where, because I had attached so much excitement to the beginning stages of those benzos, I really abused them over time. And I never looked for methods and mentors that would help me to heal long term rather than short term. So I did those. I did all sorts of things, from breathing techniques to certain visualization techniques. I did CBT. I dabbled with NLP. I did some hypnosis work. I did EFT a little bit. I was looking into some other things, but I was going to chiropractor, to physiotherapist, to naturopath, to all sorts of different doctors. I mean, I was so sensitized that I probably got the same physical bodily symptom checked out about, I'm not even kidding, about 30 to 40 times by different doctors, online and offline, and still not being convinced that it was related to emotional distress. So those are the things that I tried. I tried everything. I did everything I could, and I never committed to anything really, except the benzodiazepines, which in fact took me towards a place that wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm. How did you come off of those?
Oh, I came off of those very gradually and through the help of my doctor, of course, because that's number one. And I did it by understanding that understanding that it wasn't that long-term fix that I truly, truly wanted. And so I began simply looking to understand my anxiety, my stress, my depression, my OCD, understanding these things and these labels that were placed upon me. I didn't want to walk around for the rest of my life with this label on me, because I brought it everywhere. I brought it everywhere. I checked in with my anxiety all the time to see if it was okay to do certain things. Was it okay to go to this yoga class? Anxiety said no. Was it okay to talk to this stranger? The anxiety said no, you're going to be overly judged. They might see your sensations. Is it okay to move into a new career? No, because you're already in this place and you're fully accepted here. So by checking in with my anxiety constantly, I found that the biggest problem was at an identity level. It wasn't environment. It wasn't the situation. It wasn't the lack of skills, although that is very important. It was identity. It was the way I looked at myself. It was what I believed I was and what I believed I deserved, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that had to change.
Mm-hmm. So how do you talk about anxiety with people and not have that fear of judgment hold you back? How can the listener who is experiencing this but thinking that it's just me,
Yeah,
because we know that's not true, it's
right.
just me and I'm totally embarrassed, people are going to think that I don't have my act together.
Right. You know, there's a certain amount of courage that comes with healing, Lori. I mean, we all have to dabble into this at some point if we want long-term healing. The stigma doesn't help. You know, if I were to physically, break my ankle, everybody would come to me for help and so forth. But if I take a day off work because of, extreme levels of anxiety, all of a sudden, this is something that should be taken care of through, positive thinking. Because if someone hasn't experienced anxiety, they just don't know what it's like. I'll be honest with you. There comes a lot of sacrifice with healing. You have to sacrifice your level of acceptance with people. You have to sacrifice your connectedness. You have to sacrifice your old identity. You have to sacrifice your old beliefs. There's so much to sacrifice on the road towards healing that my best advice for anybody out there would simply be to be completely upfront. Completely upfront. Because when you're completely upfront with somebody, it shows to most people, because most people are in fact willing to understand. Maybe they don't understand right away, but they're willing over time to understand where you're coming from. It takes a whole lot of energy to hide anxiety. Tons of energy, tons of resources being used up. By the end of the day, you're looking for the pizza, the beer, whatever it is, to fill up your willpower points again. But you have to be upfront and you have to say, you know what? This is what I'm dealing with. And if you really care, and most people will take the time over time to care, if you really care, I want you to come with me and experience what it's like an entire day to be with me in my thoughts, my emotions, my behaviors, my imagination, as far as me experiencing anxiety. So I would be totally upfront. I would sacrifice some things as far as being misunderstood and maybe losing a friend or even a family member, because the opposite to that is way too painful and distressing for you. Be upfront. Prove to yourself that you can. Be vulnerable, because it is, in fact, moving towards that uncomfortable, vulnerable place that you need to be in order for healing to show up. So, in fact, you're proving to yourself that you can do this by being open to others. And it helps us as well. Really helps, the teachers and such, because this is something that shouldn't be hidden. At this, there's, you start to feel like you're bigger than how you see yourself, and it really helps in your own healing process. And the right people will be there for you when they're meant to be there.
That's so good. I love it. I love that word, misunderstood. It's okay to be misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, because that means you're authentic and you're being yourself.
It's huge.
Yeah. It is huge. It is absolutely huge. Before we go, I want to just ask you, for somebody who is struggling at the workplace, this seems to be a big thing. It was for me, I know, and for a lot of women that I talk to. They're not happy in their job. There's a lot of stress and anxiety going on throughout the day. What can they do? They have to have the job. So it's like they're there. How do they make their day better?
There's a couple things that are very important to understand with the healing process and what's going on, let's say at work. When your survival brain kicks in and the emotional brain attaches to that survival brain, you're basically looking out for the next threat. It's constant, right? When you're looking out for the next threat, you're very much in a tunnel vision kind of view, right? If the threat is the boss, for example, and you're at work, and the boss is walking across and you didn't get the job done, or maybe it's not at the quality that your boss would expect, the only thing you're focused on is your boss, okay? You have no peripheral vision. You can't see what's on the left. You can't see what's on the right. You can't recognize what's behind you. Everything is focused on that threat. So at the workplace, it's very, very important to understand that when you're in this survival mode, you're solely focused on one thing. And what you want to do is you want to engage in your five senses and engage in what's on the left and on the right of you, rather than just focusing on the threat. So whatever's on the left, notice what you can see. Whatever's on the right, notice what you can see. Left, notice what you can hear. On the right, notice what you can hear. On the left, notice what you can feel with your physical body. What does it feel like? Notice what's on the right. What can you feel? Is there something that you can taste on the left, right, smell, and so forth? It's very important to move away from this tunnel vision kind of direction that your survival brain is taking you towards, and recognize what's surrounding you. That's very important. Number two is you want to make sure that you focus on a 50 to 70% speed of what your normal is, because the more anxious you get, the faster you do things. And so you're going about your workplace, getting the job done really, really quickly, and it's affecting the quality of your work. You're eating and you don't even taste your food and so forth. You want to make sure that you recognize, am I functioning? Am I doing this right here, right now, at about half speed, 50 to 70% speed? Thirdly, if possible, you want to make sure that you focus on your breathing patterns. And as you're focusing on your breathing patterns, you want to be simply consciously breathing rather than unconsciously breathing. That's it. I'm not too worried about whether someone is breathing deeply or shallowly. It's more so a focus. If you can breathe deep, even better. But it's tough when you're in survival mode. Mm-hmm. But that certain rhythmic breathing pattern that you're focusing on tells you that, hey, I've got more control than I think in this situation. So those are three things that you can do right in the moment. But remember that your stress and your anxiety in the workplace is a symptom of what's really happening underlying. Okay, it's just a symptom. It's not the boss. It's not the pile of work. It's not the people. It's not this or that. Yes, the energies of that collective can affect you, but underlying there's repressed emotion. There's unresolved issues from the past. There's all sorts of different labels that you placed on yourself: guilt, blame, unforgiveness, and so forth. And again, when you start to find that you're getting the wins, the small wins, like a win here, a win there, you're placing yourself in an unfamiliar situation and you're doing things differently, when you gather these wins, it opens up more information that will lead you towards your long-term healing. So I hope that you people, Lori.
Oh my gosh. Yes, because you can use those 3 steps and all of it anywhere. Anywhere in life. As I was doing it while you were talking, I'm looking left and right. I'm feeling it. Like I'm going to use that.
Let me add one more thing.
Yes.
The reason why we're so anxious is because of some kind of a future experience. And when we think about that future experience, we're running pictures and movies in our heads, whether we know it or not. Now, and from an NLP standpoint, what people can start to do, if they start to feel like a future threat is imminent, it's coming up, when I get to work or whatever it may be, you can start to fiddle with the pictures that you're in fact running in your head. So you can in fact look at your boss and you can see him in a little, pink tutu, for example. Right? You can close your eyes and imagine that happening. Or you can listen to your boss's voice from the voice tone of Mickey Mouse. Notice how that makes you feel, right? And you can notice that when you walk into the workplace, everybody there is recognizing you and giving you, the respect and the joy that you truly want. You can begin to alter those. It takes a little bit more focus and a little bit more an environment that you won't be distracted, but fiddling with these kinds of things. What can you see, hear, feel, taste, and smell in that movie, in that picture, is going to get you to feel emotionally different when you place yourself in that physical experience. So I urge people to work on their conscious imagination of what they want and how they want the experience to go, and ridicule the negative, rather than allow their unconscious imagination to run their feelings. This is something that's also very important.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's fun too. You can kind of make it fun. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Dennis, I could talk to you all day long. Yes, it is fun. What about lifestyle for you? And I know we're going to wrap it up, but do you do a morning routine, an evening routine? I'm always so interested. My listeners love to hear morning routines.
Yes, I'm very much experimental with my habits, morning, afternoon, and evening. I make sure that I split the day into 3. What am I doing in the morning for growth? What am I doing in the afternoon for myself? What am I doing in the evening for myself? So I don't look at the entire day, but I split it into 3, and I say, you know what? What does my system need now? That's it. What does my system need now? In the morning, I wake up in the morning. The moment I wake up, I go, I put myself up on my bed. I sit there and I run what's called image cycling. Image cycling is based on the Bankston method. People can look it up, the Bankston method, where you run, and this is a very general way of a beautiful technique. I believe the fastest manifestation technique there is, but you basically recognize 7, 8, 9, 10 different aspects of your life, and you run the images of those future aspects and how you want them to look in your life. So I go, a 5-second movie in my health. What does my health look like? What does my relationships look like? What does my connections look like? What does my success look like? What does my this look like? What does fun look like? And so forth. So I do that about 3 times. I rotate those pictures 3 times, which gets me to plant the seed of who I'm going to become, my identity. What do I want my life to look like? Then I'll make myself some tea, and I get the tea's ready and so forth. I let it steep, take a shower and so forth, and I take on my day, and I check in with myself again. And as I check in with myself prior to doing a session or multiple sessions throughout the day, I will make sure that I do a little prayer of some sort. I'll ask God to use me in certain ways, to use me as a tool to help other people and to speak through me. I'll do that. That should take a few minutes. In the afternoon, I'll make sure that I do about a 10 to 15 minute meditation, so I'm not so caught up in my day. I'll take time for myself. And in the evening, I'll leave the evening part of my day to reframing. If there's anything from my past that still needs to be resolved, I have certain techniques that I do. These show up on my Facebook and my programs that gets people to cut the anchors that are holding them back. But it's very much structured, Lori, and very much experimental too. I'm not perfect. I'll leave out afternoons and evenings sometimes, even mornings, but I'll do my best to be as steady and consistent as I can.
That's you letting go of the perfection,
Correct.
The perfectionism.
Exactly.
And you replace it with experimentation.
Exactly.
Oh, this was wonderful. You have helped us so much. Dennis, how can my listeners reach out? I'm going to have all of your information linked in the show notes, but how can they work with you?
TheAnxietyGuy.com. If you head over to TheAnxietyGuy.com, there's a ton of stuff there. There's my blog posts, previous podcast episodes, my programs, one-on-one sessions with me, everything you need to know about me, the direction we're going as a tribe, as a group, and so forth. TheAnxietyGuy.com. As well, you can head over to YouTube. I try to answer, as many questions as I can through my YouTube channel when someone comments there. So your listeners can, leave a comment, and I'll do my best to reply to that as soon as I can. But social media, I'm out there. They can get a hold of me in many different ways.
Yes, your website is fantastic.
Oh, thanks, Lori.
I told you before we started recording, I saved it on my browser because
Awesome.
I've been listening to your podcast episodes and just reading through your articles. It's a wonderful resource, and I hope if you're listening and you are feeling this weight of anxiety that you go and you check it out and know that you can do something else and be willing to learn about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lori.
Thank you, Dennis.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you, Dennis. What a great episode. Go and check out Dennis and his wonderful website, theanxietyguy.com, his YouTube channel. Everything is on his website, so you can just click there from the show notes. What a amazing tool that he gave us to use to be able to focus in that moment of that fight or flight, which I experienced so much of it in the workplace. I'm just so thankful for someone like Dennis who is just telling his story and coming out and saying that you are not your anxiety. This is not going to be what is leading you in life. You can take control. What a blessing. What a blessing. Thank you so much for listening today. If you are ready to live life without alcohol and become a woman who no longer wants to drink, schedule a free coaching session with me. It's easy to do either at my email, hellolori@lorimassicott.com, or at lorimassicott.com. Join the email community at lorimassicott.com so you get in bonus episodes and special offers. I want to thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you for being here. I am leaving you with another virtual hug. Go out and live your very best life. We are not guaranteed tomorrow. Live it today and be present and focused in who you are, and know that you are doing the very best that you can do. And today, it's good. It's more than enough. Love you. Bye.
Thanks for being an important part of the Anxiety Guy podcast community. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a positive rate and review. If you're searching for further support on your road to recovery from anxiety, head over to anxietyexit.com and take part in the powerful End the Anxiety program based around the CBT model. If you're searching for a more one-on-one approach, you can sign up now for personal coaching sessions with Dennis via Skype. Remember, you are more than anxiety. See you in the next episode.